The silence after the recoil was the loudest thing he'd ever heard. He'd pulled the trigger without hesitation, and now the massive railgun, half the size of a cargo hauler, sat steaming, wires hissing, the magnetic coils glowing red-hot. The slug had already torn through the sky, piercing the orbital carrier like a needle through wet paper. 33 years of Council oppression, shattered in a single shot. Commander Holt didn't blink as he watched the explosion blossom through the viewing glass. He didn't need a cheer. No one in the command bay dared speak, either from shock or fear of what came next. The Council's orbiting stronghold had been considered invincible. No race, no civilization, let alone Earth, had ever dared fire on it, until now. "Direct hit," muttered someone behind him. A tech, young voice, probably shaking. Holt wasn't. Not anymore. Not after everything they'd stripped from him. They'd taken Earth's sovereignty, turned it into a factory planet, forced their culture on billions, stole languages, drowned cities, erased history, erased pride. He could still remember the day they came and renamed his brother, stripped him of even his damn name, so he'd be more efficiently catalogued in their interstellar census. His brother never came back from the re-education camps. No body, no word, nothing. So Holt rose. He fought. In secret, he built. He bled friends and burned every alliance Earth had left just to smuggle tech off-world, stolen components, ancient relics of pre-war Terran weaponry, alien power cells bought with blackmail and blood. He didn't care who he had to lose, because they had to lose more. The railgun was just the start. A woman at the console turned, face pale. "We're getting pinged from the Council's relay. High Command wants to know if that was intentional." He stared at her like she'd just grown scales. "Tell them Earth doesn't ask permission anymore." Nobody moved. Now. Her fingers trembled over the console. The ping was answered. There would be no diplomacy, no apology. That was part of the plan. The Council would send its enforcers. Holt wanted them to. Wanted to see their clean, polished ships scrape against Terran atmosphere and realize too late that humanity had stopped playing nice. "Deploy the teleport anchors," Holt ordered. Gasps. A few turned to look at each other. "But sir, teleportation technology's untested. Even the prototypes. We don't need it to be perfect. We just need it to hurt." The techs went to work, silent and grim. The room vibrated with the low hum of power, stolen, volatile, barely stabilized energy channeling through the crude teleport matrix beneath the Earth's crust. What the Council never saw coming. Earth was done imitating. They weren't trying to join the galactic table anymore. They were flipping it. Holt closed his eyes as the pulse built. They'd called humanity primitive, unstable, short-sighted. What they didn't understand, what they refused to admit, was that humanity didn't rise by playing fair. They survived because they were the only ones who learned to win dirty. They could break rules faster than others could write them. Teleporters next. That was the promise. They weren't used for travel, not at first. No, Holt had something far more brutal in mind. Imagine teleporting a nuke into the bridge of a warship. Imagine pulling the lungs out of a council commander mid-speech. Imagine collapsing the space between two suns and watching. It wasn't science fiction anymore. It was strategy. Rage forged into genius. "We've got council interceptors entering atmosphere," said another tech. "Multiple. They're not waiting for communication. Orders?" "Let them come," Holt said quietly. He looked out the window again, watching the charred remains of the orbital carrier drift in pieces. Let them come see what Earth really is. They came faster than expected. Within minutes of the orbital carrier's destruction, Earth's skies tore open with the arrival of the Council's elite. Sleek, black interceptors, shaped like obsidian daggers, sliced through the stratosphere, trailing a sickly violet flame. They were silent, deathly precise, and faster than anything Earth had ever manufactured, before Holt's rebellion. But Holt had been preparing for years. Inside the mountain base, buried deep beneath Greenland's permafrost, the atmosphere turned electric. Alarms didn't blare. Holt hated noise during battle. The red lights pulsed, cold and deliberate. The techs scrambled into coordinated chaos, each one trained under fire, each one hand-picked not for obedience, but for anger. These weren't soldiers, they were survivors turned believers. At the center of it all stood Holt, arms behind his back, posture straight, eyes hard as frost. "Status on Anchor 0, he said. "Stabilizing. We've got about 87% sync," replied Nora, the only technician who never flinched when speaking to him. "That'll have to do. We've never teleported living material. I'm not interested in sending people. I'm interested in sending a message." Nora looked at him like she wanted to argue, but years under his command had taught her not to waste time. "Charging the spatial core now." Outside, sonic booms cracked the heavens. The interceptors began their descent, forming attack formations too advanced for Earth's crude air defense systems. But Holt wasn't relying on missiles or dogfights. He'd stopped playing by council rules a long time ago. "Where's the payload?" he asked. "Loaded. Plutonium core wrapped in iridium shards. You sure you want to go with that yield?" "If the council wants fear, I'll give them horror." Nora nodded grimly. The teleport anchor vibrated beneath the facility. Holt could feel it in his bones, like a second heartbeat. Irregular, angry. This wasn't theoretical anymore. This was humanity's wrath made tangible. "Coordinates are locked," said the engineer at the targeting console. "Target acquired, Council Interceptor lead, ship ID Zeta 213. "That's one of their commanders," Nora murmured. Holt stepped forward, eyes locked on the monitor that displayed a glowing outline of the sleek alien craft. "Do it." A brief silence, then, thwump. The air shimmered. Light cracked the walls like lightning trapped in a bottle. The anchor screamed, but held. Seconds later, 40,000 feet above ground, the interceptor didn't explode. It ceased to exist. 1 second, it was cutting through clouds. The next, it was a plume of white-hot light and vapor. Gone. No wreckage. No remains. The control room sat in stunned silence. Holt didn't smile. "That's what defiance looks like," he muttered. "Get ready to do it again." But the council wasn't unprepared either. They'd always known Earth was a problem waiting to ignite. Their mistake was assuming it would stay manageable. 10 more ships came. These weren't scouts or recon units. These were gunships, each bristled with weapons that could shatter city blocks. Their crews weren't bureaucrats. They were enforcers. Trained in suppression, planetary lockdown, and civilian intimidation. The kind of monsters who considered genocide just another shift. The world's old governments had crumbled trying to appease them. Holt planned to gut them. Back in the mountain, the teleport matrix was overheating. Steam hissed from coolant vents, and Nora was shouting at someone about heat sinks failing. "We can't fire again this soon. The core's unstable." "We don't need to," Holt said. He tapped the comms. "Activate sleeper cell gamma." A pause. Then a voice crackled through the speaker. "Gamma active. Proceeding with breach." Thousands of miles away, in what used to be Johannesburg, a cluster of council warehouses exploded inward. Not outward, inward, imploding like crushed cans. Dust and fire danced into the sky as teleport grenades, another one of Holt's nasty little experiments, blinked entire buildings out of existence, teleporting them 10 meters underground, encasing them in their own destruction. At the same time, sleeper agents hidden across the planet began triggering attacks. Council comms towers disappeared. Storage units of alien weaponry disintegrated. Command centers were evacuated under panic protocols. The Council's secure relay station in Geneva? Teleported into the Atlantic Ocean. Panic swept the Council's local forces. They couldn't predict where to strike back. Because this wasn't a war about territory, Holt didn't want to win ground. He wanted to destroy their sense of control, and then, finally, they retaliated. A blast from orbit hit the Pacific. Holt saw it on the monitors. The screen bloomed in white as the ocean evaporated in a blinding flash. The Council didn't care about Earth's people. Never did. If they couldn't control the planet, they'd burn it. The shockwave hit the Californian coast 30 seconds later. Thousands died instantly. Holt watched the data scroll by. The numbers, the locations, the casualty lists. He didn't flinch. He knew the price. What he didn't expect was the tightness in his chest when he saw the name. His mother's shelter. Gone. No confirmation. No survivors listed. He stepped away from the screen. Slow, like gravity had thickened. Nora turned, her voice unsure for the first time. "You okay?" He didn't answer. He walked to the wall, hands shaking, and pressed his fist against the cold steel. Just for a second, just long enough to feel the rage boil past the pain, long enough to swallow it down, not bury it, but sharpen it. Because grief was a weapon, too. "Bring up orbital coordinates," he said. "You're not thinking of, 'I'm done reacting.' It's time they bled." Far above Earth, the Council's backup carrier floated in high orbit. Not a warship, a diplomatic vessel, used for logistics, political meetings, and control. It was supposed to be safe. Untouchable. Holt's people found a flaw. A single access channel in their defense grid used for diplomatic dropships. It had a 4-second delay. Not enough time to fly anything in, but enough to teleport. "Prepare the beacon device," Holt ordered. "You're going to teleport into the ship?" Nora asked. "Not me, just a little gift." The gift was a compressed gravity well bomb. Illegal, unstable, the kind of thing that could bend steel like paper and twist bulkheads inside out. Holt only had one. He sent it. The teleportation anchor barely survived the strain, but it held long enough. 14 seconds later, the Council's orbital diplomatic vessel split apart like a cracked egg. No survivors. The retaliation was immediate and brutal. Council ships dropped from the sky. They weren't interceptors anymore. They were full-on war carriers. Massive, lumbering, and angry. They hit Mumbai, Caracas, Toronto, millions dead. "Sir, they're escalating. They're trying to make an example of us," one of the analysts shouted. "They can try," Holt said, jaw clenched. Nora moved to him quietly. "You have to stop. We made the point. We showed them we're not afraid." Holt turned to her, voice low. "You think they'll stop? That they'll say, 'Oh, those humans fought back. Now let's treat them with respect'? They'll never respect us, because they don't need us. Then what's the end game here? We take away what they do need." She stared, uncertain. Resources, infrastructure, control. We don't just kill ships, we kill their systems. No more Earth factories, no more compliant governments, no more resource streams. We make Earth toxic to them, so expensive to keep that even their greed won't justify it. Silence. Nora swallowed. "You're going to burn the whole world down, aren't you? If that's what it takes for them to finally leave us the hell alone." He walked away before she could reply. Outside, the sky was ash. Fires burned across continents. The global net was shattered. Power grids collapsed. The planet was bleeding, but not begging. Across Earth, small rebel factions were rising. Holt's message was spreading, not just on screens, but in action. Cities once ruled by fear were turning on their council-appointed governors. arresting them, executing them. It wasn't just war anymore. It was revolution. And Holt stood at the edge of it all, watching the storm he unleashed spiral into something bigger than he could control. But that was the point. You don't control a wildfire. You aim it. Smoke settled like a blanket over the remains of the eastern seaboard. What used to be major cities, commerce hubs, centers of art and science, were now ghostlands riddled with the ash of retaliation. The Council's counterattack hadn't just been military, it was psychological. They weren't just punishing rebels, they were sending a message: defy us, and you'll be erased. But what the Council had never understood about humans was that erasure didn't scare them. Not anymore. Holt had made sure of it. In the dim light of the command chamber, he stared at a map riddled with red. Flashes of impact, systems offline, civilian collapse zones. It was a losing game by any rational standard. Earth couldn't match the Council's resources, couldn't outlast them in a war of attrition, couldn't win in a traditional sense. But Holt had never planned to win traditionally. "Status on the Council's logistics ring?" he asked without turning. "Still disrupted. We've cut 5 key supply channels feeding their garrisons on Earth," Nora reported, her voice brittle from lack of sleep. "And the response? They're panicking, pulling units from their own colonies to reinforce here. Internal comms are starting to break down. There's word they're rationing energy even in the inner systems." That made him pause. "Good. Keep it unstable. Keep them guessing." Then a younger tech, barely out of his teens, approached, wide-eyed and sweating. "Sir, we've got incoming. Not Council, civilian." "Show me." The screen shifted, revealing a fleet of ragged ships limping toward Earth's atmosphere. Not warcraft, old cargo freighters, retrofitted orbital miners, patched together shuttles, over 50 vessels in total, trailing damage and black smoke. But they flew under no Council banner. Just white markings across the hulls, the Exodus fleet. Nora leaned in. "They're refugees." "From where?" "Council slave colonies, looks like. Human ones. Some have been in orbit for decades." Holt's throat tightened. He stared at the screen. Dozens of ships, rusted and broken, but flying. Alive. "They saw what we did to the carrier," the young tech whispered. "They think Earth's fighting back. They think they can come home." He didn't respond immediately. There were risks. The Council could use them as a diversion, or worse, implant agents. But part of him didn't care. These were his people. Survivors, like him. Like his brother might have been, if he were still alive. "Clear them landing zones. Strip every non-essential ship for parts. And get medics ready." "You sure?" Nora asked. "We started this war to free humanity. Not just the ones already here." 3 days passed. Rebel strongholds grew. The Exodus fleet landed and the people spilled out, sick, malnourished, half-feral, but grateful. Grateful enough to fight. Holt stood among them when they landed. Didn't wear his uniform. Didn't stand on a pedestal. Just watched as a girl no older than 10 stepped out of a rusted cargo bay and looked up at the sky like it was a miracle. Her arm had been replaced by a makeshift prosthetic. Council engineering, brutal, efficient, ugly. She met his gaze and didn't flinch. And when she said, "You're the one who fired first, aren't you?" He nodded. Her lips curled into something halfway between a smile and a snarl. "Good," she said. "They killed my dad. I hope you kill all of them." Holt didn't reply. He just put a hand on her shoulder. And in that moment, he knew exactly what he was going to do next. Operation Spinebreaker wasn't designed to win battles. It was designed to break the will of the Council's control structure. The plan? Target the invisible skeleton of their dominance, the data hubs, communications relays, and oversight satellites that made their sprawling empire function. Humans didn't have ships that could match the Council in firepower, but teleportation changed everything. In a room barely wider than a prison cell, Holt stood in front of a screen, surrounded by engineers, rebel leaders, and Earth's last hackers. 14 satellites, he said, pointing to each marker as they flickered. That's the core of the Council's command relay. Take them out, and their AI won't be able to coordinate troop movement, resource transport, or civilian oversight. They'll go blind. And they'll respond, Nora warned. If we start tearing out their eyes, they'll strike hard, harder than ever before. I'm counting on it. They stared at him. Let them overreact, he continued. Let them throw everything they have at Earth, because while they're trying to kill us, we'll kill their empire. The first relay was easy. It orbited just beyond Mars, relatively unguarded. Holt used a micro-teleport burst to phase a bomb directly into its central processor. No explosion, just a system-wide meltdown of every linked database in the relay chain. Thousands of connected outposts across Council territory fell into darkness. The second was trickier, guarded by Council interceptors, but Earth's rebellion had gained a new ally. The outcasts, humans from the fringe, mercenaries, pirate bands. Former collaborators turned double agents. They'd heard the stories. Railguns first, teleporters next. They believed in it. Or maybe they just wanted to watch the Council bleed. Either way, they fought. The second relay vanished in a sphere of bent space-time. Then came the third, and the trap. The Council had been watching. They allowed the rebels to hit the first two relays without interference, to lure them into a false sense of momentum. When Holt's team went for the third, a detachment of full-scale war cruisers awaited. They hit fast, hard, no warning. Holt was in the command bay when the alert came. "Sir, they've captured Alpha Team." His blood went cold. "How many?" 7, including Aaron. He closed his eyes. That name, it wasn't just another soldier. She had been with him since the beginning. The first to join him. The first to believe. She'd built the teleport grenades with her own hands. She'd lost her brother in the Council's education camps. And now she was gone. No, not gone. Taken. "Bring up Council broadcast intercepts," he snapped. A screen flickered. A Council spokesman appeared, all smug superiority wrapped in diplomatic tones. "The terrorist responsible for recent attacks has been identified. We will no longer tolerate such primitive defiance. His name is Holt, Commander Holt. And to ensure Earth understands its place, we will demonstrate the consequences of rebellion." The camera panned. 7 figures knelt on a Council ship's deck. One of them looked up. Bruised. Bloody. "Aaron, we will begin the executions in 24 hours unless the Earth Rebellion surrenders unconditionally." The screen went dark. The silence in the command chamber was unbearable. Nora was the first to speak. "We can't let her die." "We can't get to her," someone else said. "That ship's in orbit, no teleport lock, shielded. It's a fortress." But Holt's mind was already moving. They thought they had him. Thought he'd blink, break, bend. They didn't know him at all. "Prep the anchor," he said coldly. "We're going to send them a reply." "But we can't teleport through their shields." "Who said anything about teleporting in?" He brought up schematics. Council ships had shield relays, massive generators mounted externally, just outside the main hull. Shielded against energy weapons, but not designed to stop matter from phasing into nearby space. "You're going to teleport a bomb next to the shield array," Nora realized aloud. "Not a bomb," Holt said. "Me." The room fell silent. "You can't," Nora began. "I'm the one they want. They'll lower shields to take me alive. They think I'm a symbol. Let's give them one." No, I won't authorize that," she said, voice cracking. That's suicide. I'm not asking for permission. You won't come back. I know. He turned to her, just for a second, the hardened commander slipping away to reveal the man beneath. This isn't about survival anymore. It's about making sure they never forget who we were, what we did. He stepped toward the teleport pad, body tense, adrenaline steady. They shattered Earth because they thought we were too fractured to fight back. Let's shatter them back with fire and steel and blood if we have to. He stepped onto the pad and vanished. The moment he reappeared, Holt could feel the wrongness of the place press against his skin. The Council dreadnought was alive in the way only enemy territory could be, sterile and sharp. The air was chemically clean, recycled through systems so advanced they didn't even hum. Light panels flickered above him with surgical white precision, casting harsh shadows on silver walls that smelled of ozone and blood. He crouched in a maintenance shaft, narrow ribbed metal and shaking slightly from the internal energy flows of the ship's engines. His heart didn't pound. His hands didn't tremble. That part of him had burned out years ago. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about meaning. He moved quickly, crawling through the tight space, guided only by a rudimentary layout smuggled from an informant 3 months ago. It was probably outdated, maybe even bait. He didn't care. All he needed was one chance to make them regret taking Aaron. Through the narrow grating, he could see them. Council enforcers, thin, towering, half-organic, moved with eerie grace down pristine halls. Their armor gleamed, their faces were hidden behind mirrored visors. But Holt didn't need to see their eyes to know what they were thinking. Arrogance. Always arrogance. This is our ship, our rules, our prisoners, our message. He was going to break all of it. Aaron was still alive. The Council would have killed her already if they didn't plan to use her. That gave him a window, small but enough. He waited for a patrol to pass, then slid a blade out from his belt. Primitive. Carbon steel. No electronics. No alerts. He cracked the vent panel open, dropped to the floor, and in one silent, vicious motion, he dragged the blade across the thigh joint of the enforcer's exosuit as it walked past. The creature shrieked in static, fell forward, and Holt landed on its back like a wolf finishing a wounded deer. 2 fast strikes, one at the neck seam, the second through the back plate, and it stopped moving. He stripped the armor. Sloppy fit. Not designed for humans. But it would buy him seconds, maybe even a full minute if he avoided direct scanners. He slipped into the hallway and moved. The detention level was near the ship's lower decks, standard design for all dreadnoughts. Keep the prisoners below, beneath everything like dirt, like filth. Holt remembered what it was like to feel that way. He took the lift down 3 levels, passing through security points on a countdown. The suit was pinged once, twice. The 3rd time, a security node blinked red, and Holt bolted the moment the alert triggered. Sirens screamed. Doors began locking down. Too late. He was already inside. He tore off the stolen armor and hurled a teleport grenade at the bulkhead, programmed not to teleport a bomb, but a hole. The hallway warped violently. Metal twisted and vanished. The wall imploded into itself with a sound like someone ripping a mountain in half. The prisoners screamed. He was through. They kept Aaron in a reinforced cell, isolated from the rest. She was on her knees, face bloodied, one eye swollen shut, but still upright, still breathing. He stopped just outside the cell, and she looked up. Even through the swelling, her mouth split in a cracked grin. "You took your damn time," he grinned back. "I had to walk. Stupid way to die." "Yeah," he agreed. "I've made worse decisions." He pulled a pulse knife from his belt and jammed it into the locking mechanism. Sparks flew. The door creaked, stalled, and then collapsed inward. She stood on shaking legs. "You got a plan?" "I was hoping you had one." "I hoped you did." They stared at each other, and then, together, they ran. They didn't get far. 3 council enforcers intercepted them at the corridor junction. Aaron pushed Holt aside before he could speak, grabbed a weapon off the ground from a fallen guard, and sprayed a full magazine of plasma fire into their center mass. 2 dropped. The 3rd tackled her. Holt tackled it. They rolled across the metal floor, fists slamming, blades scraping. The enforcer's strength was mechanical. Its punches crushed ribs, shattered walls. But Holt didn't fight fair. He jammed a teleport shard into its mouth. The flash was instant. The creature's head disappeared, along with a foot of the ceiling behind it. Aaron wheezed. "You're insane!" "You're welcome." They made it to the core chamber. Holt had only one remaining trick left. He'd planted a teleport beacon inside himself before leaving Earth, a tiny sliver buried under the skin in his hip. It was one way, untraceable, and had one function only: allow someone to lock onto his signal and drop a final payload into his location. He activated it now. The final gift: a gravity spike rigged with a black matter core. A bomb designed to collapse a ship's artificial gravity field in on itself, ripping bulkheads, hulls, crew, and systems into a singularity the size of a coin. No explosion. No survivors. Aaron looked at the device in his hand and realized what he was about to do. Her jaw clenched. "You're not getting out of here, are you?" "I wasn't supposed to." "No, hell no." She stepped forward. "We both get out. You didn't come all this way just to die on this tin can." He shook his head. "If this ship survives, they win. They'll show footage of us captured, tortured, executed. That's the story they want. We can't give them that." "Then let's both stay and make sure they don't finish that story." He stared at her. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of hope. Not peace, not comfort, but the sharp, dangerous kind of hope that only lives when everything is broken. And something still burns anyway. "All right," he said. "But we don't run. We finish it." They planted the bomb in the core. They fought through 2 more squads. Outnumbered and bleeding, they used teleport shards like knives, blinking enemies into walls, teleporting their weapons mid-swing, collapsing parts of the floor as they ran. The dreadnought started to groan. Lights flickered. Gravity faltered. The black matter spike was already activating, drawing in mass at the subatomic level. They had minutes. Back in the maintenance shaft, Holt triggered the emergency beacon. Earth picked it up instantly. It wasn't a message. It was a countdown. On Earth, Nora stood in the control room as the coordinates came in. "He lit it," she whispered. "He actually lit it." Silence. Then she stepped forward and barked, "Open relay to every rebel channel, every ex-military feed, every human orbit satellite still online." The comms officer hesitated. "That'll expose us. Do it." She stared at the camera. Jaw set, voice shaking but loud enough for the universe to hear. "This is Earth. This is for Holt. Watch the skies." And then, up above, the stars moved. The dreadnought bent, folded, collapsed. The light didn't explode. It vanished, sucked in like a dying breath. 1 second the ship was there, then it was nothing but silence and dust. And just like that, the unbreakable symbol of council dominance was gone. But Holt didn't die. Not yet. Aaron had rigged a short-range teleport pad at the last second, burned half her face doing it. They landed hard on the edge of Earth's atmosphere, crashing into a rebel dropship that picked up the beacon. Bloodied, battered, alive. He woke in a hospital bed 3 days later. His chest was wrapped in synth bandages. His leg was gone. His right hand was missing 2 fingers. He couldn't feel anything below the ribs. Erin sat beside him, face pale, one eye covered in gauze. "You're not dead," she said simply. "Feels like I should be." "You're a bastard, Holt." "Yeah." She reached over and gripped his arm. "Thanks for coming back." News of the Dreadnought's destruction spread like wildfire. The Council tried to suppress it, tried to spin it, called it a tragic accident. But the message was already out. Earth fought back, and Earth won. The rebellion spread, not just across Earth, across every Council colony where humans had been beaten, enslaved, silenced. Rebels began striking. Systems collapsed. Control slipped. The Council wasn't defeated, but they were bleeding. And Holt? He was no longer just a man. He was a warning. The sky over Earth didn't look the same anymore. What used to be constellations now flickered with debris trails, scattered wreckage of the dreadnought Holt had torn from the stars. The night glowed faintly from low-orbit fires still burning weeks later. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't peaceful. But it was free. Holt sat in a wheelchair at the edge of the rebel camp in northern Europe, wrapped in a thermal cloak, staring up into that scarred sky. His body wasn't the same. His right leg ended just above the knee, his ribs stitched with artificial plating, his spine running electric with pain every time he breathed too deep. But pain meant he was still alive. And being alive meant he still had work to do. Behind him, the base buzzed with life. It wasn't military anymore. It was something more primal. Refugees, fighters, engineers, medics, farmers. People who'd once been strangers and statistics now stood side by side, rebuilding something the Council had spent decades trying to kill, a future. But the cost, he still saw the faces, of the 7 captured, of the 2 who hadn't made it back, of every damn name scrolling down the digital wall in the war room every morning, those lost to orbital strikes, those buried under Council prisons, those sacrificed to buy Holt just 1 more hour of war. The dead didn't forgive easy. And Holt didn't forget. The Council didn't collapse after the dreadnought fell. They tightened. Like a wounded animal, they clawed inward, pulled back their outposts, abandoned fringe systems, and focused everything they had into 2 things: crushing the Earth Rebellion and silencing the spread. But it was too late. From the mining moons of Varos to the slave worlds of Segment 5, humans who'd once kept their heads down started rising. Quietly, at first, refusing orders, slowing production, sabotaging machines. Then louder, smuggling weapons, seizing stations, even executing Council overseers and broadcasting it back to Earth. Holt didn't order those actions. He didn't have to. He'd become something worse than a commander. He was a signal, and signals couldn't be shot. In the converted bunker-turned-command hall, Holt rolled himself in as dozens stood and saluted. He hated that. Still did. He wasn't a general. He wasn't a leader. He was a reaction to 1,000 years of humiliation. "Sit down," he grunted. "Talk to me." Nora took the lead. She looked older, grayer around the temples, voice raspier from too many late nights and field dust, but she hadn't lost her edge. "We've received new transmissions from the outer sectors. 7 more colonies rose up in the last 10 days. Holt nodded. "We've also got a problem," she added. He waited. "Council has established a new base on Luna." The room quieted. Earth's moon. That had been untouched during the rebellion, off limits. Too close, too strategic. No one had dared touch it. But the Council just had. "They're using it as a rally point," Nora continued, "setting up a new shield grid, orbital cannons, and, this is confirmed, they're building a teleportation gate, not short range, long range." "Meaning?" "Meaning they're not planning to run. They're planning to bring reinforcements in from other sectors. Fast." Holt leaned forward, pain shooting down his back. How long before it's operational? 3 weeks, 4 if we sabotage their supply runs. Then we end it in 2. The room tensed. Someone at the edge, one of the newer lieutenants, spoke. With respect, sir, we don't have the firepower to take Luna. Not without another dreadnought. We don't need one. He tapped the screen with his remaining hand. We already own the ground. We take their supply route, we teleport in, and we take the base from inside out. The plan was suicide. Just like every plan Holt ever made. But the rebellion didn't deal in odds anymore. They dealt in urgency. And the urgency was this. If the Council solidified their position on Luna, Earth would burn. Not immediately, but slowly, strategically. They'd strangle the rebellion in orbit and rebuild control from above. So Holt pushed them into motion. He couldn't walk, but he could command. And what he couldn't do with his body, he made up for in tactics, ruthlessness, and his gift for turning human desperation into coordinated fury. The sabotage team was deployed first. 24 rebels hijacked a Council supply hauler just outside Jupiter's orbital checkpoint. The pilot, young, cocky, and half-mad from too many close calls, jammed their own signal just long enough to fool the gate relays. They slipped in toward Luna. On board, tucked inside cargo crates and shielded from scans, were 16 teleport anchors. Their mission? Land undetected, plant the anchors inside the base's infrastructure, map the interior, and hold position until Holt gave the signal. They called it Operation Tombstone, because that's what Luna would become. Back at base, Holt sat alone in the war room. He didn't sleep anymore, not really. Not since the Council broadcast their latest message planet-wide. He had replayed it 100 times. A new voice this time, not the calm diplomacy of old. This one was venom. Raw. You think you've won. You think Earth matters. You are ants playing with fire. We'll bury your planet. We'll erase your name from the stars. And then the footage. A rebel outpost in Indonesia burned to ash by an orbital strike. Children among the dead. Civilians. Hundreds of them. They had nothing to do with Holt. But the Council didn't care. They were striking back with a brutality even he hadn't predicted. When Nora entered again, Holt didn't look up. She sat beside him. Her voice was quiet. The team's in. No casualties. All anchors deployed. He nodded. She hesitated, then added, I know you're not sleeping. I will when it's over. It's never over. It is for them. She studied him for a moment, then asked the question no one had dared. What happens when we win? He blinked. I don't know. You ever think about it? I didn't think we'd get this far. Silence. Then she said, You're not a machine, Holt. He finally looked at her. I was never trying to be. Then stop carrying it all alone. He didn't answer. Because he couldn't. Because he was carrying it. The dead, the failures, the impossible decisions, the rage, the guilt, all of it. The final assault began on day 40. Luna's surface cracked with shockwaves as rebel squads teleported inside the base's internal structure. Not near the front, not by the main gates, but inside the shield generators' cooling systems, inside the mess halls, the data cores. The barracks. They didn't attack with armies. They attacked like a virus, one cell at a time. Holt watched it all unfold from the mobile command unit now hovering in high orbit. He gripped the rail with his good hand, chest heavy with old pain and adrenaline that hadn't dulled even after all this time. Nora's voice came through the relay. Anchor team secured the core. Ready for Phase 2. Send the final team, Holt ordered. Are you sure? That base is collapsing from the inside. I'm going. A pause. Holt. I said I'm going. They teleported him into the command tower of the base itself. It was already on fire. Explosions echoed in the distance. Plasma fire ran down the halls. Council guards, panicking now, barked orders in a dozen alien languages as rebels stormed through corridors like shadows. Holt's wheelchair clanged against the metal floor. He dragged himself forward, ignoring the blood in his mouth, the static in his ears. The command center was straight ahead. 3 guards stood there. He stared them down. They hesitated. And that's when Aaron came out of the smoke behind him. 2 sidearms raised, and blew their heads off before they could react. "Can't let you have all the fun," she muttered, stepping beside him. He smirked. "Thought you were done with suicide missions." She shrugged. "We're human. We never learn." They pushed forward together. The command center's core reactor came into view. Pulsing, glowing, the heart of the Council's presence on Earth's last satellite. Aaron turned to him. "This is it." He reached into his vest, pulled out the last black matter shard. "Then let's finish it." And they did. The base didn't explode. It imploded. A wave of pressure burst upward into the stars, shaking Earth's orbit, sending debris spinning into space like sparks from a funeral pyre. Every Council transmission went dark. The gate was gone. The base was gone. The war was changing. The day after the Luna base collapsed, Earth was silent. No war alarms, no emergency broadcasts, no orbital scans blaring alerts, just silence. Holt had never trusted silence. It wasn't peace. It was the sound predators made just before the kill. He sat in the recovery ward of the orbital med ship Trident, staring through the thick shield glass at the cratered surface of the moon, now scorched black and riddled with burning wreckage. They had pulled him and Aaron out just seconds before the singularity spike detonated, his second close scrape with death in weeks. This time he hadn't walked away. He'd been dragged. And this time it wasn't just his leg and ribs. It was his lungs, his spine. His blood was chemically stabilized. Every breath was mechanical now, assisted by a device grafted to his side. "You're not fit to return to command," the doctor had said. "I'm not asking for a vote," Holt replied. "You don't understand. Your nervous system is shot. You'll be paralyzed fully in weeks, maybe days. I just need hours." That was all he ever needed. In orbit, Earth's resistance had started taking shape into something new. It was no longer a ragtag rebellion. It had structure now. Fleets, territory, satellites, allies. Holt didn't like it, because with structure came politics, and with politics came leeches. He saw them pouring in now, former Earth ministers who'd survived by staying quiet during the occupation, crawling back with their suits and polished shoes, trying to stake claims in the new government. He saw corporate remnants whispering about trade, reconstruction, investment. They hadn't bled for the cause. They hadn't buried comrades or burned ships. But now that Earth was winning, they wanted a seat at the table. Holt wanted to flip that table and set it on fire. "They're planning to call it the United Earth Accord," Aaron said bitterly, tossing a datapad on the table. He was lying on his hospital bed, half conscious, the machine in his ribs clicking with every breath. "They've even got a logo," she added. "And a charter," he grunted. "Let me guess. No mention of the dead. Only in passing. And the council? They're calling for negotiations." That made him sit up. The machine beeped erratically. "Negotiations? Now?" Aaron crossed her arms. "They say the council's collapsing. The inner systems are rebelling too. Civil wars are breaking out. Supply chains are dead. They're weak." "Good. Then finish them. They want to avoid more bloodshed." Holt's jaw tightened. "They only talk about bloodshed when we're spilling it." Aaron looked away. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she said, They want you to attend the summit." He laughed, coughed. "They think I'll smile for the cameras and shake hands? They think you're a symbol now, a hero. Heroes die quiet deaths while suits rewrite history." Erin sat down beside him. Her eyes were tired. Maybe that's what comes next. Not suits, but something that doesn't look like a battlefield." "You think we've earned peace?" She hesitated. "No, but maybe we've earned the chance to try." He closed his eyes. The silence returned. But peace wasn't coming. Not really, not for him. 2 days later, the council responded. Not with ships, not with weapons, but with something worse. A signal. A mass transmission hijacked every active comm relay on Earth, across every colony, every satellite. It began with static. Then came a voice, mechanical, calm, inhuman. "This message is not from your oppressors. It is from what they serve." The screens lit up with a symbol, ancient, circular, pulsing with geometry that hurt to look at. "We are not the Council. We are the core. The Council is ours. They are failing." The voice was not in one language. It was in every language at once. "We did not permit your awakening. You are unfit. You are flawed. You were never meant to fight." The silence in Earth's command halls was total. "This is your final warning. Return to compliance, or face cleansing." The signal ended. A moment later, 4 deep space satellites went dark, then exploded. No ships, no traces, no explanation, just destruction. Not war. Erasure. Holt was brought into the council chamber, his chair pushed by Erin, machines still working overtime to keep him breathing. His presence quieted the room. He looked at them. Ministers, scientists, ex-generals, politicians reborn. And said only this. They weren't scared of the council. They were scared of who controls them. No one argued. They all knew it was true. The council had never made sense. Too efficient, too cold, too bound to doctrine over survival. They weren't an empire. They were caretakers. Caretakers of something bigger. The core. Back at the war room, Holt reviewed every scrap of data from the hijacked signal, every frequency shift, every pattern, every anomaly. "You see this?" he said, pointing to a burst in the waveform. "It's not noise, it's a countdown." "To what?" Erin asked. "I don't know yet, but we're not going to wait to find out." He called a meeting, not with politicians, with fighters, commanders, outpost leaders, resistance heads from the outer colonies, pirates, hackers, smugglers, even those too broken for alliances but still willing to bleed. He didn't ask for loyalty. He asked for rage. "We were never supposed to fight back," he said. "They bred us for obedience, used us, caged us, and when we broke the leash, they sent their masters." He stood from the chair, only barely, using the edge of the table for support. The room went still. "I don't want peace. I don't want to rebuild their systems in our image. I want to burn them out of the sky. I want the core to remember us not as rebels, but as revenants, ghosts they created, and ghosts that returned to break their chains." He didn't give them time to clap. There was no applause. Just fists against tables, and a war cry that echoed across systems. It was no longer about Earth. It was about species, about existence. The core had controlled the council. But who controlled the core? Holt didn't know. But he planned to find out. They named the mission Black Pulse. Infiltrate the outer rim where the council's oldest tech originated. Find the signal. Trace it. And do what humans did best. Break what should never be touched. The ship they gave him wasn't pretty. No polished hull, no ceremonial nameplate, no crew quarters with soft beds and diplomatic flags. It was old, older than most of the rebellion's fleet, scarred, rewired 100 times, blackened from heat and patched with alien alloys scavenged from burned council stations. But Holt didn't care. He didn't want luxury. He wanted something that could take him to the edge of the galaxy and back again. If there was a back again. It was called the Penance, a fitting name, though Holt hadn't picked it. Erin had. She never said why, but the look in her eyes when she said it was enough. They both knew this mission wasn't about survival. It was about finishing the war, before it mutated into something far worse. The signal that had spoken for the core wasn't random. Holt's analysts had traced it to a point in deep space, beyond the mapped territories, where no council vessels had ever dared linger long. A region known only in old reports as Sector Null. There were no planets there, no stars, just void. Except, something was there, a pattern, a pulse, an impossible silence. It wasn't just a broadcast, it was a heartbeat, slow, ancient, and mechanical. Holt believed it wasn't just a system, it was a being. Estimated time to breach edge of Null Sector, 22 hours, said the pilot, a quiet man with skin like rusted steel, cybernetic implants pulsing faintly under his neck. His name was Varen, another survivor. Holt never asked for his story. He could see it in the man's eyes. No one joined Holt unless they'd lost everything. Beside Holt, Erin stood with her arms crossed, watching the stars stretch as the ship jumped through dark matter folds. She hadn't said much since they left. Not because she had nothing to say, because words wouldn't be enough. They both knew they were flying into something not even the Council understood. Something that had built the Council. Maybe even more than that. "You ever wonder," she finally said, "if we weren't supposed to find this place?" "No." "Why not?" "Because the moment they tried to control us, they made us curious. It's what they never understood. You beat a human down long enough, eventually they stop asking permission." She looked at him. "You still think we're going to make it back?" He gave her a look that was somewhere between a grin and a grimace. "I think if we don't, it won't matter." The edge of Null Sector didn't look like anything. It didn't feel like anything either. No readings, no stars, no static, just absence. Then, slowly, the ship began to resist. The engines whined. The lights flickered. It wasn't interference, it was pressure, not physical, but psychic, as if the universe itself didn't want them going any farther. "We're being scanned," Varen muttered. "By what?" Erin asked. He didn't answer, because no system was showing anything, yet Holt could feel it. Something behind the black, something watching with no eyes. Then the pulse returned. This time it wasn't through speakers. It was in their bones, like gravity, like inevitability. And suddenly, without warning, the penance stopped. Dead halt. No alarms, no crash, just stopped. Ahead of them, through the front viewport, the void shimmered and split. A structure emerged. No, not a structure, not in the way humans understood structures. It was shape, geometry, wrong angles that looped back on themselves, towers that bent inwards, curves that became spikes depending on where you looked. A station, a temple, a machine the size of a planet, drifting in total silence. They had found the core. Landing wasn't a choice. The ship moved forward on its own, guided like a puppet on invisible strings. The docking sequence engaged. "We're not doing this," Varen whispered. "This is them." "No," Holt said. "This is us. They just think it's them." The Penance docked with a massive inlet, circular, rimmed with markings so old they predated the Council's oldest archives. The moment the hatch opened, Holt felt his breath catch, not from awe, but from recognition. He'd seen this place before, in dreams, in flashes, in the way certain council buildings had been designed with curves and symbols they never explained. This wasn't new. It had always been there. Erin stepped beside him. Her hand went to her weapon. But there were no guards, no defenses, no warnings, just a long hallway of light and shifting darkness. They walked. The air didn't feel like air. The gravity didn't feel like gravity. Everything was too smooth, too clean, like it had never been touched, never worn, as if time itself didn't function here. Holt limped forward. His prosthetic leg clicked against the floor. Every step echoed more than it should have. After what felt like hours, or no time at all, they entered a central chamber. A sphere of light floated above a black dais. Beneath it, cables like tendrils stretched down into the unknown, and waiting beside it was a figure. Not human, not alien, just wrong. Its body was fluid, not made of flesh, not made of metal, something else, shifting, reflective. It had no mouth, yet it spoke. "You should not have come." Erin raised her weapon. Holt didn't stop her. "I don't take orders from things that hide in the dark," he said. The figure tilted its head. "We hid nothing. We designed everything. The council, the systems, the failure, all by design. Why? Because chaos needed a cage. Your species was fire. We built walls to contain you. The council was the wall. And now the wall's broken." The light pulsed. "That was not intended. You were meant to collapse, not to rise." Holt stepped forward. "Then why are we still here?" Silence. "Then, because you evolved outside expectation." The cables above them vibrated. "You are an anomaly." Holt nodded. "Good, because I came to break you." The figure didn't react. "We are not singular. We are systemic. You cannot kill a shape with a fist." "Then I'll use a railgun. Your defiance will trigger extinction." He smiled coldly. "It already did. Yours." That's when he dropped the device. A black cylinder. No bigger than a fist. Custom built by Earth's finest engineers. A reverse teleport anchor, designed not to send people out, but to pull something in. Specifically, a collapsing star core, harvested from a council disaster zone, unstable and radioactive. The moment it hit the floor, time fractured. The light in the room went red. The figure screamed, not in sound, but in reality. The walls trembled. Geometry failed. The chamber began to break. "You came here to die," the figure said. "No," Holt whispered. "I came here so you would." Erin grabbed him. The teleport pad flared. They vanished. The core didn't explode. It caved. Sector Null collapsed into itself. The last trace of the core vanished from every system it touched. And Earth? Earth watched as its final master bled into the void. Back on Earth, the sky looked different again. This time, it looked free. The broadcasts stopped. The satellites hummed. The stars flickered. And for once they felt like they belonged to humans again. Holt never gave a speech, never took a title. He returned in silence. And as he looked up at the sky, broken body propped by crutches, Erin beside him, he whispered the words only she could hear. "It's over." She didn't nod. She just stood there, hand on his arm, letting the silence speak for them both. The war was over. Not in the way people imagined it would end. There was no grand parade, no surrender papers signed on a shining council platform, no mass celebration echoing across the stars, no neat closure. Just silence, the kind that lingered after something massive died. The core was gone. The council had fractured. What remained of its armada had scattered across deep space, fragmented, terrified of the humans they once ruled like livestock. Earth was alone again, but it was free. And freedom, as Holt had always known, came with a price most weren't willing to tally. but he had tallied it. Every damn name, every grave, every scar. He lived with it now, in the wheelchair they'd modified for him to command from, in the artificial lungs that hummed softly beneath his skin, and in the silence that followed him like a shadow through every corridor of the new capital. People tried to talk to him. They wanted quotes, titles, statues. He said no to all of it. They wanted him to be a symbol. But Holt didn't want to be remembered as a hero. He wanted to be remembered as a warning. The capital was nothing like the cities Earth once had. It had no glittering skyline, no towering monuments to wealth, no bureaucratic maze of offices designed to hide cowardice behind paperwork. It was built in the ruins of what used to be Oslo, not out of pride or symbolism, but because it was still standing. Nora had chosen the site. "Let the world grow where something used to be broken," she said. And so they did, brick by brick. No help from the outer systems, no treaties, no galactic loans or pacts with alien markets. Humanity rebuilt itself, the way it always should have. But peace didn't feel like victory, not for Holt, because the war had taken more than limbs, more than breath. It had taken purpose. In war, he had clarity. In peace, he had weight. Too many looked at him with eyes full of expectation. They wanted him to shape the new world the same way he broke the old one. He didn't want to. He couldn't. So he withdrew. The house they gave him was just outside the rebuild zone. Simple. Small. Quiet. Aaron visited often. Sometimes every day, sometimes only once a week. They didn't talk much at first. What was there to say? He'd gone to the edge of the galaxy and pulled a god into a black hole. Words felt cheap after that. But over time, they found silence could be enough. Shared coffee. Watching storms roll in across the new wind farms. Playing old music from the days before, back when Earth thought aliens might bring answers instead of chains. It was there, in that stillness, that Holt realized the war hadn't taken everything. It had just taken the noise. And what was left behind was real. He had nightmares. Of course he did. Not of death, but of obedience. He saw himself in a council uniform, eyes blank, voice calm, carrying out orders, removing dissidents, processing civilians, watching Earth burn from behind a tinted visor without blinking. He always woke up before the dream ended. Always gasping. Erin was usually there when he did. She never asked what he saw. She'd seen enough herself. One morning a boy knocked on his door. 17, maybe. Dirty jacket, scar over one eye. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, holding a battered data pad. "You're Commander Holt, right?" "Used to be." The boy shifted his weight. "I just wanted to say, my dad was in the Luna cell. He didn't make it, but he said if he died, it'd be okay, because you were out there." Holt didn't reply. "I'm joining the fleet next month. I want to help defend the colonies. Not control them. Just help." Still, Holt said nothing. The boy turned to leave, embarrassed, but just before he stepped off the porch, Holt spoke. "Don't carry it all. Not alone." The boy turned, surprised. "That's how they break you," Holt added. "Make you believe you've got to carry all the weight yourself. You don't." Then he went back inside and closed the door. 3 months passed. The fleet expanded. Earth's colonies were no longer labor camps. They were settlements, homes, academies, research hubs. Humanity began exploring again, but this time, not under someone else's leash. For the first time in recorded history, humans went into space not to belong, not to beg, but to build. Not everyone liked the new direction. Some factions rose up, old collaborators who missed the order the Council once provided, war profiteers, pirates, false messiahs. But this time they weren't met with silence or excuses. They were met with Earth's answer. And Earth didn't bend anymore. One day, Nora called. "Holt, we're forming the assembly," she said. "You have to be there." "I don't." "You do. We're signing the independence charter for every outer colony. Erin's flying in from Pharos 3. She wants you there." "I'm not good at ceremonies." "You're not there to smile. You're there because you earned the right to see what you fought for." He sighed. "I'll think about it. You've been thinking for a year. Come see what you made possible." He went. Not because he wanted to, because she was right. The assembly wasn't held in some golden dome or floating platform. It was held in the same underground chamber where the rebellion's first meeting had taken place. Steel walls, flickering lights, and a long crack in the floor no one had ever bothered to fix. Every colony sent one delegate. No guards, no fanfare, just people. Holt sat at the back. No nameplate, no badge. But when they began the proceedings, every voice in the room paused, and every eye turned toward him. He shifted in his seat. "Keep talking," he muttered. "You don't need me for this part." But someone stood up, a young woman from Mars' core, with oil-stained hands and a nervous smile. She raised a hand. "I move that the first declaration of the United Human Assembly include this, that no future government shall place power above people, systems above souls, or obedience above freedom, that we remember why we fought, that we remember him." She didn't say his name. She didn't have to. The room went quiet. And then it voted. Unanimous, Holt left before the end. Too many eyes. Too much weight. But in the hallway outside, Erin caught up with him. "You proud?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. "I don't know what I am," he admitted. She nodded. "You ever think we made it worse?" he added. "By fighting?" She shrugged. "We didn't make it better for everyone, but we made it possible. That's more than most." They stood there a while longer. Then she said, "You're not done yet. I'm old, broken. So was the world. We rebuilt it. You can do the same." He gave a dry laugh. "You ever stop giving speeches?" "Nope." They walked out together, not because they had a plan, but because walking forward was all they'd ever done. Years passed. The galaxy moved on. But Holt didn't fade into history. Not really. He lived long enough to see the first deep space station named Revenant Point, a reminder that humanity would never bow again. He saw children learning Earth's history without censorship. He saw ships launched with human-made engines, not stolen alien tech. He saw peace forged not through submission but through strength. And then, quietly, one day, he died. Not on a battlefield, not in fire or blood, or under the weight of alien chains, but in his sleep, in a small house near a wind farm, with the stars visible through the window. No statues were built. No songs were written, but in every rebel camp that still trained across the colonies, in every classroom that taught what Earth used to be, in every transmission that warned tyrants what would happen if they ever came back. One name was still spoken, not as a god, not as a saint, but as something far more powerful. A man who didn't kneel, a man who fired first, a man who never asked permission to be free.